Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're going to break down a terrifying, completely invisible countdown that would immediately kick off if every single bee on Earth suddenly vanished. It's a wildly fascinating and honestly kind of frightening scenario to think about. We're going to explore exactly how missing just one single link in nature could totally upend human civilization as we know it. Let's dive in. Close your eyes for just a second and imagine waking up tomorrow to a seemingly completely normal world. The birds are still singing, the sun is shining brightly, and everything looks exactly the way it did yesterday. But something tiny is missing. Every single bee is just gone. There's zero buzzing in the gardens, no hives in the trees, no honey being made. Now, at first glance, life just continues as usual, right? People head to school, they commute to work, the shops are still packed with food. But hidden inside nature, a clock has started ticking. So what happens next? Well, that's the mystery we're going to solve right now. When you actually map out the timeline of a world without bees, that initial illusion of everyday normalcy shatters incredibly fast. On day one, nobody really notices a thing. But within just a few months, flowers simply stop producing as many fruits. Fast forward a few years down the line, and those creeping consequences slowly overwhelm the globe. We're talking food prices skyrocketing, entire populations of wild animals just disappearing, and one of Earth's most absolutely crucial creatures being gone forever. All right, let's move into section 1, more than just honey, the invisible engine. To really understand this, we have to start with the sheer scale of their population. Get this, there are more than 20,000 different species of bees buzzing around the world today. Now, most people just assume bees are only here to make honey, right? But honestly, honey isn't their biggest job at all. It's practically a side hustle compared to their actual job, which is far, far more critical to our very survival. The real magic here is pollination. When bees collect nectar from flowers, these tiny grains of pollen stick to their bodies. And as they fly to another flower, that pollen gets transferred. Without this totally invisible, silent little delivery service, millions of flowers would literally never get pollinated. That directly leads to a drastic and immediate drop in plant life across the board. We are talking fewer fruits, fewer vegetables, and a massive, catastrophic reduction in plants globally. Which brings us to section 2, the global food crisis, supermarket shock. If you break down our global food supply, you'll see a very specific 33% slice. That represents the world's food crops that benefit directly from animal pollinators, especially bees. That is around 1/3 of absolutely everything we rely on. By removing the bees from the equation, we're immediately setting the stage for a massive agricultural shock that would ripple across every single continent. So what exactly makes up that 33%? We're talking about our absolute favorite everyday foods here. Apples, mangoes, strawberries, watermelons, cucumbers, almonds, sunflowers, the list goes on. Without bees, all of these familiar crops become incredibly hard to grow. Now, supermarkets wouldn't empty overnight, but slowly, fresh fruits would become incredibly rare, and certain vegetables would become totally inaccessible, or just completely disappear in some countries. To really put that kind of scarcity into perspective, imagine walking into your local grocery store and having to pay 1,000 rupees just for a tiny little box of strawberries. It's crazy, right? Basic, healthy food transforms instantly into a total luxury item. And while the wealthy might still be able to afford a strawberry or two, millions of people, especially in poorer countries, would heavily struggle to get enough nutritious food and would face severe, widespread hunger. Of course, humanity is stubborn. We wouldn't just give up without a fight. Farmers would try to take matters into their own hands. Literally, they would attempt hand-pollinating flowers using tiny little brushes, which, believe it or not, is something that actually already happens in a few small parts of the world today. But try to imagine scaling that up. Picture hand-pollinating billions of flowers, one by one. It would cost an enormous amount of time and an astronomical amount of money. Many farms simply couldn't survive that kind of financial strain. Crop production would free fall, governments would panic over food shortages, countries would scramble to import whatever food they could, and prices, they would just keep rising.
Let's look at the bigger picture in section 3, collapsing like dominoes, the ecological shockwave.
Beyond just human food, the rest of the natural world is in serious trouble, driven by what scientists call a cascade effect. Basically, nature is connected together like a giant, intricate chain. When one absolutely essential species disappears, it forces many other connected species to start vanishing too. It's pretty simple. If you break one vital link, you weaken absolutely everything else. Nature collapses just like a line of dominoes. Step 1, a ton of wild plants that rely heavily on bees just die out. Step 2, because those plants are gone, wild animals lose their primary food source. Birds have fewer seeds, butterflies lose their flowers, and small mammals starve. But it gets worse. Look at step 3. Even our livestock takes a massive hit. Cows eat plants like clover and alfalfa, which depend heavily on pollinators. So, step 4, less food for cows means less milk, less cheese, and skyrocketing prices for meat. We would literally watch our fields become less colorful, our forests lose crucial plant species, and bird populations dramatically decline. Which leads us to the ultimate question for our species in section 4. Can humanity actually survive? The new normal.
So what's the honest truth? Well, we probably wouldn't go completely extinct. While our apples, almonds, and strawberries would essentially die off or become extreme luxuries, stable crops like rice, wheat, and corn are largely wind-pollinated. They actually don't rely much on bees at all. Plus, human ingenuity being what it is, scientists could likely invent better artificial pollination methods over time. But make no mistake here, the world would survive, but it would become a much, much harder place to live. A healthy, colorful diet would be nearly impossible for the average person, and millions more would constantly face the very real threat of hunger.
When you step back and look at the whole shebang, it really comes down to this thought: that tiny insect is quietly helping keep our planet alive. It is truly mind-blowing to realize that this one small creature does far, far more than just make honey for our tea. It actively helps grow the food on our plates, it feeds billions of people every single day, and it maintains the incredibly delicate ecological balance of our entire planet. We've seen just how incredibly fragile our ecosystem is when we remove a single keystone species like the bee. Everything is completely connected, which leaves us with an even bigger, perhaps way more terrifying mystery to ponder. If removing a tiny insect causes this much total chaos, what on earth would happen if something massive vanished? What if trees disappeared? Well, that just might be the mystery we unpack in our next explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.